I have an idea. Why don't we put together an ancient coin set? I mean, who am I to tell you what you should collect, but I understand it's relatively easy to plan a modern coin set because you have some pre-established targets that most people go for, like date sets, type sets, but for ancients, it's a bit more complicated. You need to come up with your own ideas. There's a bit of research you need to do beforehand to figure out what exactly is available out there. And it may be hard for beginners to figure out a goal to your collection, even if you already have some knowledge on the historical period you want to collect. So, how about I give you a couple of suggestions? I nudge you towards some small sets that I find interesting. These can serve as a base point for you to start your own research and expand your collection from it. See today's suggestions like if I just handed you a little numismatic sprout and you need to help it expand its roots. It isn't that impressive at first, but it's the beginning of a collection. It's an assembly of coins you can tell a story about, and it can serve as a catalyst to bigger and better things. Okay, what we're doing today is a Roman Republican silver set. The Republic was around for a very long time, from 509 BC, when the last king of Rome was overthrown, to 27 BC, when Augustus became the first Roman emperor. Well, technically the empire never ceased being a republic, but in all practical matters it was over. What we call Republican silver coinage spawns the period between around 300 BC, when Rome issued its first silver coins, to 25 BC, when Augustus reformed the monetary system as part of his administrative reforms. Anything after that year is called Roman imperial coinage. There are two versions of this set that we can assemble. There's what I would call a full set, which we will not be getting into today because it has some fairly rare and expensive coins. This includes coins issued between 300 and 212 BC, silver coins mostly made to facilitate trade with the Greek cities from the south of the Italian peninsula, and special issues for the Punic Wars. So the coins adhere to more of like a Greek monetary standard, not something exactly Roman. On the other hand, this smaller set we're exploring today is basically the denarius and its fractions. It's a set that spawns also a fairly long time frame, from 211 BC, during the Second Punic War between Rome and Carthage, when the denarius standard was established, to 25 BC, with the reforms of Augustus. Notice this is also a fairly long time frame, nearly 200 years. Throughout this time, the designs of the coins changed a lot. Some of the denominations were not issued for the entirety of these 2 centuries, but we will not worry about this today. I'll show you coins from different moments in this time window, just to give you a taste of the stylistic evolution, but I want to focus on giving you a more basic first contact with this set. Okay, our set has 4 coins: a full denarius, a half denarius, called a quinarius, a quarter of a denarius, called a sestertius, and a victoriatus, a bit of an anomaly of a coin, worth 3/4 of a denarius. And by the way, leave a comment below telling me what kinds of ancient coin sets you would like me to discuss next. Anything ancient or medieval. I'll keep an eye at the comments, and if I pick up on any trends, sets that people often ask for, I'll make sure to make a video about it. Okay, let's begin with the full denarius. This will be the most common denomination by far. It was issued continuously throughout the Republican period. Some issues are rare, while others are incredibly common, but you really are spoiled for choice in this case. The first century or so of the existence of the denarius, so between 212 and 130 BC roughly, has a couple of main designs that often repeat themselves. Normally, the bust of Dea Roma on the obverse. There might be some sort of denominational mark as well. At first, the denarius was tariffed at 10 copper asses, so that's what we see here, to the left of Dea Roma's helmet, a number 10 in Roman numerals. And on the reverse, the first types generally feature mainly the divine twins, Castor and Pollux, riding their horses, with legends at the bottom mentioning Roma. This example we're looking at here is from around the 180s BC, so it's not the very earliest denarius. but it's still one of the anonymous types. Anonymous means it doesn't mention the magistrate responsible for its manufacture. The Dea Roma obverse will continue being issued for quite some time. Here's a later example from 126 BC. Same type of portrait. The only major difference is that now there is a number 16 instead of 10. As the Punic Wars raged on, Rome's heavy bronze coinage, the original coinage of the Romans, started becoming lighter and lighter as the desperate republic tried issuing more and more coins, more and more money to pay for war expenses. This generated inflation on the bronze coinage. It lost value in relation of silver, which made it lose value. So that's what led to the change of value of the denarius to 16 asses. On the reverse of this piece, we see another very popular type of early denarii, featuring the chariot. Sometimes it's a biga, or a 2-horse chariot. Sometimes, like in this one, it's a quadriga, so 4 horses. In some rare instances, the chariot might be pulled by some other animals, like goats. The deity driving the chariot also changes depending on the issue. In this case, it's driven by Libertas, the goddess of freedom. She's holding a pileus, the cap given to freed slaves, to symbolize that's her, because that was one of her symbols. These later denarii also start showing the initials of the magistrates that issued them. In this case, it was issued by a certain Gaius Cassius. Always research the magistrates that issued your coin. It's fascinating the kinds of stuff you may find about these characters. Some went on even to become consuls or have very interesting life stories. The denarii I liked the most, however, were those issued between roughly 120 and the 50s BC. So these magistrates, the ones responsible for overseeing the mint, they picked the designs on the coins and they realized coins were a great place to put their personal political propaganda. So at this time we see an explosion of creativity on the designs. A whole bunch of different gods and goddesses, different reverses, even the old reverses of the Dioscuri and the chariots, when they show up, they look different in different poses. They are made with more care. There was a lot of effort to put the visual uniqueness on each coin issue. It's really creative. If I had to pick one denarius to get started on the set, it would be from this time period, just for the sheer variety to choose from. This example I have on your screen now that I'm using as an example was issued under Publius Servilius Rullus. He wasn't a particularly important character. The only records we have of him was his term as a mint overseer. However, his family held important positions in Rome for nearly 700 years, from the first years of the Republic in the 490s something BC all the way to the 2nd century AD, well into the imperial period. On the obverse we have this lovely image of Minerva, the Roman interpretation of the Greek Athena, wearing her Corinthian helmet over her head. Notice the lovely plumes falling down the top of her helmet, down on her back. The armor she's wearing also has a lot of details, and to the left we have this nice little inscription, Rulli, strategically placed at the side, marking a reference to the branch of the Servilius family this magistrate belonged to. I really enjoyed this obverse. Not only the image of Minerva is very well executed, but the design is also very clean, it's easy to understand, and the flan is huge, so there's a little bit of a margin of space around the bust, which lets the design breathe a little bit. On the reverse we have once again a chariot, in this case a biga, but the horses look much more detailed, much more dynamic. Some less talented engravers would fall for the easy solution of just making repeated images of the horses side by side, giving it a little bit of a copy and paste effect. But here the horses look unique. Each one of them looks slightly different. Their legs are not in the exact same position. One is slightly taller than the other. It's just an overall improvement in art quality compared to earlier denarii. The biga is being driven by victory in this case. We can see it's her by the wings on her back and the palm branch she's holding, which symbolize the military victory and the end of war. Underneath, we have the proper name of the money here now, Publius Servilius Manlius Filius. Manlius Filius means the son of Manlius. And this week's episode is kindly sponsored by L5, the new online marketplace for ancient coins. L5 is a platform that focuses on trust, transparency, and low fees. It is an environment where you can safely buy coins to add to your collection, knowing every item listed has been vetted by specialists, with a lifetime guarantee of authenticity, and the new system of online bidding that ensures fair, transparent bidding. No sniping, no shield bids, just a fair trading environment for buyers and sellers. L5's proposal is to eliminate all uncertainties beginners and experienced collectors alike might have when buying a coin, while offering a low-cost service with no listing fees and a buyer's premium of just 5%. Make sure to check out L5.com for what I believe is a new platform that the ancient coin market was in need for. Now, on to the Quinarius. The Quinarius was also issued throughout the entirety of the Roman Republic. In fact, it continued being issued during the Imperial era, but in much smaller numbers. It's only really common during the Republic. A denarius was a significant sum of money during that time, so a Quinarius offered a more manageable sum of money. It was not, however, a very practical coin as far as its size goes. This little thing weighs just like 2 grams, and I need to show it balanced over my fingertip. The very first issues follow the visual formula of the denarius, so they usually have the image of Roma on the obverse, with the difference that instead of the value mark of 10, it has a 5. There's a small period between the middle and the end of the 2nd century BC when it stopped being issued in large numbers, but production will pick up again on the 1st century BC, and it will continue being abundant again. So it's another coin you should have no problems finding, especially if you're not looking for like a particular kind of coin, you just need a Quinarius. The earliest ones might be slightly harder to find compared to the later issues and a little bit more expensive. Today's example is the later one. It comes from the 1st century BC. This was a piece issued by Manlius Porcius Cato in 89 BC. I wish this one was made by the famous Cato the Elder or Cato the Younger, but sadly no, this comes from a lesser-known Cato. On the obverse we have Liber, the Roman interpretation of the Greek god Dionysus. Actually, not really. That's another cool thing about these 1st century coins and their variety of gods featured on them. You can have some insights on the nature of the Roman gods, and with a bit of research you discovered that the Romans didn't really just copy their pantheon from the Greeks. It was more complex and nuanced than that. Rome had Bacchus and Liber. While both are used in reference to Dionysus, Liber is less of this like frenzied figure. Bacchus is really all about that fiery stupor, partying, passions. Liber is a bit more austere. He likes to enjoy the good things in life, but he follows the Roman virtues. He never loses his dignitas, his dignity. I always wondered if the image of Liber was pushed as like a reactionary move on the part of the Romans, as they considered the influence from Greek culture to be positive in most aspects, but a little bit decadent as well, prone to the sensual pleasures, making the Romans lose track of what made them great. On the reverse we have a seated image of Victory, holding a laurel crown on her outstretched hand. This coin was issued at the end of the Social War, a rebellion of Rome's Italian subjects. That year, a relative of Marcius Cato was consul. His name was Lucius Cato, and this Quinarius probably celebrates Rome's victories over the Italian rebels, hence the Victrix at the bottom part of the design. The war would eventually end with a Roman victory, but Rome was forced to extend its political privileges to a larger number of its allies and subjects in the Italian peninsula, effectively making all Italians full Roman citizens and granting them access to the highest echelons of Roman politics and the privileges that this entailed, something that up to that time was restricted to very few of Rome's old traditional noble families. Now, let's look at a tiny sestertius. You might know the sestertius as this massive coin made out of brass issued during the imperial period, but the sestertius was born in the Republican period as a tiny quarter of a denarius fraction. Here's a picture of my Republican sestertius on top of an imperial sestertius. Notice the difference in size. The silver piece weighs around 1 gram, while the sestertius is like a massive 30-gram coin. Sadly, this denomination wasn't issued for a very long time, from 211 to around 200 BC, when it seems like production ceased. The fraction might have been too small or unprofitable to produce. After all, it would be cheaper to just make bronze coins at that point and focus on the available silver on quinari and full denari. The sestertius makes a reappearance in the very late Republic between 90 and 45 BC, especially during the civil wars of the First Triumvirate. But with these two small windows of time when it was in production, this makes the silver sestertius a little bit rare. Maybe not rare, but certainly scarce. Out of the 4 coins of this set, this will be definitely the hardest one to find, but it isn't impossible. Otherwise, I wouldn't be recommending you this set. It will test your patience, though. Our example is from the earliest series, so it was struck around 211 to 200 BC, and it features the original design of Roma and the Dioscuri. Quite a lot of details on such a tiny coin. I love this. Notice that while the denarius had a 10 mark on it, the quinarius had 5, and the sestertius has a 2.5, a 2 and an S. That's of course the value mark, 2 asses and half an as, called a semis. Considering how common the asses and the semises are, the ones made out of bronze, I think the theory that the Romans thought the sestertius in silver wasn't worth producing kind of makes sense. It wouldn't even be practical to handle these coins. I mean, look at that thing. I'm pretty sure someone just lost my coin at some point. It's just so small and impractical. On the reverse, as per the types, we have the Dioscuri, Castor and Pollux galloping to the right. I love how the arms of the stars on top of the twins would have been impossible to make like as straight lines. So since it's such a tiny coin, instead of these arms, they made like little pellets around a central bigger point. The bottom part is a little bit worn, but we can still read the Roma underneath if we look at it hard enough. Lovely little coin, one of my favorite Republican coins, and one of the smallest pieces in my entire collection. Okay, now, how about that weird 3/4 of a denarius piece? I mean, such a weird denomination, right? This is the Victoriatus, or Victoriatus, as they would say. It was introduced around the same time as the denarius and its fractions, so in 211 BC, and it was most likely a coin issued for practicality of commerce. Remember I mentioned the pre-211 silver coins were made in order to trade with the Greeks of the southern Italian peninsula? The Victoriatus was most likely made to allow this trade to continue after the enactment of the denarius. It was produced with silver of slightly less purity, 80% against the very high 95 of the denarius standard, and the fine silver weight of the Victoriatus was the equivalent of the Greek drachma that circulated in the Greek-dominated south. This particular piece was struck in Sicily after all, so this coin was probably used for maybe the payment of mercenaries, the purchase of goods from the Greek cities, and maybe even a way of the Republic to do maybe a little bit of trickery, to pay wages with a coin of lesser silver. They were at war with Carthage after all, so anything was valid in order to achieve victory. The Victoriatus kept circulating long after the Punic Wars were over, but it was revalued as half a denarius instead of the 3/4, reflecting its real silver value. Its production ceased at around 170 BC, when Rome took control of the entirety of the peninsula, imposing on its new Greek subjects the denarius standard. So for this coin on the obverse we have the bust of Jupiter. Quite an interesting interpretation of him, with a short beard which gives him a surprisingly young appearance. Normally Jupiter, or Zeus as the Greeks would call him, is shown with that long beard as like an older man, the ultimate symbol of authority that the king of the gods was meant to represent, but here he looks quite youthful, quite fresh. On the reverse, we once more have victory. That's where victoriatus comes from, literally meaning coin that features a victory. She's crowning a trophy. Trophies were erected at the site of a battle to thank the gods for victory. They were made out of the best arms and armor that were collected from the defeated enemies. Now, notice the equipment that makes up this trophy. There's a circular shield, behind it there's a spear, and behind the shield there's also, if you look underneath it, we see the skirt of what is probably a linothorax. This was an armor worn by Greeks and Carthaginians. I love that kind of attention to details. These are perfectly consistent with the equipment of a hoplite, the main type of frontline infantry used by the Carthaginians at that time. And finally, at the bottom, we have the inscription Roma once more. Although in this example, due to it being made in a quite compact flan, the letters were left out of the coin and can't be seen. And there we have it, a lovely little set. Not too big, but also not that easy to assemble. That should be a nice little first challenge for someone who wants to collect Roman coins and particularly enjoys the Republican period. The fact this set isn't entirely made out of coins that are super available and easy to buy is actually a blessing in disguise. This way you end up being forced to take it slow and actually do your homework, do your research, study your coins, and study the average price for coins, analyze and actually pick the type of coins you want to add to your set, and be patient while you wait for the next coin to show up on the market or your monthly budget to get recharged on your next paycheck. And of course, you can always expand the set horizontally. You don't need to have 1 denarius. You can have 2, 3, 4, as many as you want. So I hope you enjoyed this little guide. Leave a like and consider subscribing if you did. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon. Let me give a special thank you to all of my amazing channel members and Patreons for their generous support. This channel would not be the same without your help. And if you would like to be part of this list, have early access to my videos when they are uploaded to YouTube, and a series of other perks, make sure to check out my Patreon page and my members tab on YouTube. Thank you very much.